Hello Professor and hello class. My topic today is on Listeriosis from Cantaloupes for the outbreak from August to October of 2011. Listeria monocytogenes are facultative, anaerobic, non-sporing, short gram-positive motile rods that are catalase positive. This means it can live in the absence as well as in the presence of atmospheric oxygen. These cells, grown in liquid media, have characteristic tumbling motility when observed under the microscope. They are commonly found in the environment and carried by many species of both domestic and wild animals. They grow under refrigeration temperatures from 33.8 degrees Fahrenheit to 112 degrees Fahrenheit and can live at pH values between 4.4 and 9.6. The minimum water activity value for growth is 0.9. They are easily destroyed by heat, which is why they are most commonly found to cause problems when contaminating ready-to-eat foods. Food poisoning outbreaks are relatively rare. Listeriosis is a serious infection caused by exposure to the bacteria Listeria monocytogenes. Most immunocompetent people are not at high risk of infection, but anyone who consumes contaminated food containing between 100 and 1,000 bacterium can become ill. The exact infectious dose is unknown, and it is believed that it depends on the immune system of the host. Due to this fact, the people that are at the highest risk of illness are pregnant women, the elderly, and immunocompromised people. Listeriosis can present in different ways depending on the type of infection. The manifestations of listeriosis are host-dependent. Immunocompetent persons may experience febrile gastroenteritis, which is fever, vomiting, diarrhea, joint pain, headache, and/or body aches. Or they may not exhibit any symptoms at all. Listeriosis was listed as a nationally notifiable disease in 2001. Any listeria diagnosis is relayed to the CDC. The CDC runs a program called PulseNet. Listeria causes an estimated 1,600 illnesses each year in the U.S. Of these, there are more than 1,400 hospitalizations and 250 deaths. Slide 6 shows a figure from the CDC's website, Foodborne Disease Active Surveillance Network. It visualizes the relative rates of laboratory-confirmed foodborne infections with Campylobacter, E. coli, 0157, Listeria, Salmonella, and Vibrio from the years 1996 to 1998. Listeria has decreased about 38% since 1996. The next few slides touch on some of the worst foodborne outbreaks in the U.S., including botulism outbreak in 1977, the Joan of Arc bean salad scare in 1977, which was also a botulism outbreak, a Listeria outbreak from Jalisco cheese in 1985, which killed as many as 40 people, including 10 infants. Jewel Food Store milk, which caused salmonella in 1985. E. coli at Jack in the Box in 1993, a frozen strawberry scare where the USDA had a federal scholarship lunch program for the schools, and that caused many children to have to get immunized against hepatitis A. That was in 1997. E. coli at Sizzler in 2000, which claimed the life of a 3-year-old girl. Pilgrim's Pride meat, which caused Listeria outbreak in 2002. In this case, in Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Michigan, Listeria was associated with sliced turkey deli meats from Pilgrim's Pride Foods in Pennsylvania. This resulted in 7 deaths. There was a hepatitis A outbreak at Chi-Chi's in 2003. A Dole baby spinach, which had an E. coli outbreak in 2006. It led to Dole recalling all of their bagged spinach across the country. There was an E. coli outbreak at Taco Bell and Taco John in 2006, and there was a very large salmonella outbreak from hot peppers and peanut butter in 2009. 43 states were involved, and thousands of people were ill. Char-grilled ground turkey caused salmonella in 2011. But what I would like to focus on is the outbreak of Listeria monocytogenes in August through September of 2011. In this outbreak, more than 130 people fell ill in 26 states, and 26 deaths have been attributed to the outbreak. The strains of Listeria were linked to cantaloupes from Jensen farms in Colorado. Due to the fact that Listeria is typically linked to ready-to-eat foods such as deli meats, researchers believe this outbreak means much more research needs to be done on the spread of Listeria. The specific source of contamination has not yet been identified, but it is believed the main source is the environment of the facility that was used to wash, pick, and store the cantaloupes after harvest. Listeriosis usually leads to mild flu-like symptoms, but in many of these cases, it presented as an invasive disease. Symptoms of gastrointestinal disease can include septicemia, which is bacteria in the blood, and meningitis, which is a bacterial infection of the membranes covering the brain and the spinal cord, as well as spontaneous abortions in women. It may be invasive, but it is rare. There are about 3 to 5 cases of listeriosis per year per 1 million population on average. This is the typical rate for most industrialized countries. So what makes this such a bad disease? Primarily because a large portion of the cases, approximately 20%, have a lethal outcome. When comparing it with well-known foodborne illnesses such as E. coli, O157, and Salmonella, which lead to approximately 0.5% deaths in infected individuals, then you can see that 20% of infections leading to death is quite a concerning number. Let's take a closer look at this bacterium and why it is so deadly. Its ability to survive on ready-to-eat foods at refrigerated temperatures surely is one reason. This is why most pregnant women are advised to microwave their deli meats before consumption or to stay away from deli meats altogether. Another reason is because it can invade and survive in host cells. From there, it can spread from host cell to host cell without exiting the extracellular space. This facilitates avoidance of the host immune system. This bacteria can penetrate intestinal, placental, and blood-brain barriers. This is how it causes fetal death and meningitis. How is the outbreak traced back to a specific source? Outbreaks are either detected by increase in cases above baseline or identification of multiple linked cases through molecular subtyping. This outbreak was detected by Colorado public health officials. They noticed a much larger number of listeriosis cases over the course of a few weeks than normal. Then molecular subtyping of human disease-associated isolates was submitted to the CDC-led PulseNet. PulseNet allows nationwide subtype comparison all across the U.S. After a linked cluster of cases was identified, the epidemiologic studies began. They do this by giving out a food consumption questionnaire to all the patients with listeriosis. Then, case control studies are used to identify the foods for which consumption is significantly overrepresented among outbreak cases. Definitive identification of an outbreak involves isolation of the pathogen subtype from the food that has been implicated, in this case the cantaloupes, as the outbreak source in an epidemiologic investigation. 4 strains of Listeria were isolated from whole and cut cantaloupe samples from patient homes or from samples from Jensen Farms cantaloupe, from grocery stores, and from the farm. On September 14th, the farm issued a voluntary recall of all of its cantaloupes. How did they define a case for this outbreak? Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report defined a case as illness with one of the outbreak strains isolated on or after August 1st. Outbreak strains initially were defined as clinical isolates of Listeria with specimen collection dates in August, 2 enzyme PFGE pattern combinations that occurred in 2 or more persons and matched any of the 4 patterns. In the analysis of the Listeria Initiative data, they compared the first 19 outbreaks associated with these cases in 2011, with 85 cases among persons greater than or equal to 60 years old with sporadic listeriosis identified during August of 2004 through 2010. This indicated that cantaloupe consumption was strongly associated with illness caused by the outbreak strains, because 100% of the 2011 cases versus 64% of the 2004-2011 cases matched. The odds ratio was 14.9 with a 95% confidence interval. Initial tracebacks of cantaloupe purchased by patients were linked to Jensen Farms in Colorado, and this was verified. In slide 16, you can see where they were affected and who was affected by the outbreak. The states affected were Colorado, Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Indiana, Wisconsin, Wyoming, Alabama, Arkansas, California, Illinois, Maryland, Montana, North Dakota, Virginia, and West Virginia. The people affected, 88% of patients were over the age of 60. The ages range from 35 to 96 years old. 55% were female, and 92% reported eating cantaloupe within the last month before the onset of symptoms. Unusual features of this outbreak. This is the first Listeria outbreak associated with melon. 4 widely differing PFGE pattern combinations and 2 serotypes were associated with the outbreak. This outbreak was unusually large, 130 cases. The next closest outbreaks were one with Frankfurters, which was 108 cases, and another one with Mexican-style cheese, which was 142 cases. This outbreak has the highest number of deaths of any U.S. foodborne outbreak of Listeria since the Listeriosis outbreak in 1998. Slide 18 is a figure that shows persons infected with the outbreak-associated strains of Listeria by date of illness onset in Figure A and date of clinical specimen collection in Figure B. You can see from these bell curves that the greatest number of ill persons were reported between the dates of August 25th through September 15th. What can you do to prevent infection of Listeria? The CDC has some great tips for prevention that we can all do. Rinse raw produce, such as fruits and vegetables, thoroughly under running tap water before eating, cutting, or cooking. Even if the produce will be peeled, it should still be washed first. Scrub firm produce, such as melons and cucumbers, with a clean produce sponge. Dry the produce with a clean cloth or paper towel. Separate uncooked meats and poultry from vegetables, cooked foods, and ready-to-eat foods. Keep your kitchen and environment clean and safe. Wash hands, knives, countertops, cutting boards, all after handling and preparing uncooked foods. Use an appliance thermometer for your refrigerator to check the temperature inside your refrigerator is set below 40 degrees Fahrenheit and the freezer is below 0. Clean up all spills in your refrigerator right away, especially juices from hot dogs and lunch meat packages, raw meat, and raw poultry. Use hot water and liquid soap and then rinse. Thoroughly cook raw foods from animal sources to a safe internal temperature, which you can find at foodsafety.gov. Use pre-cooked or ready-to-eat foods as soon as you can. Do not store the products in the refrigerator beyond the use-by dates. Divide leftovers into shallow containers to promote rapid, even cooling. Cover with airtight lids or enclose in plastic wrap or aluminum foil. Use leftovers within 3 to 4 days. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed my presentation.